The desert wind carried sand across the empty plains like a whisper of unfinished sins, and Angel Delaney felt every grain sting her cheeks as she ran, her breath ragged, her boots slipping in the dust. She didn't dare look back. Behind her, far beyond the shimmering waves of heat, was the man she feared most, the man chasing her, hunting her, tracking her with the precision of a wolf who had finally found the trembling heartbeat of fate. She wasn't running from the law. She wasn't running from guilt. She wasn't even running from danger. She was running from him, the bounty hunter whose shadow seemed sewn to her own. And yet somewhere in the deepest part of her chest, a place she didn't dare acknowledge, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to escape him. Jace Carter wasn't a man easily forgotten. He had the kind of presence that carved itself into the memory like initials on a wooden saloon table, etched deep, impossible to erase. She remembered the way he had looked at her earlier that day, when he cornered her behind the stagecoach station, dust swirling between them like a curtain before a final act. His voice had been steady, dangerous, magnetic. "Run if you want, Angel," he had murmured, stepping close enough that she could feel the heat rolling off his body. "But you know, damn well I'll find you." But what rattled her more wasn't the threat. It was the quiet that followed, the soft, strained hesitation that sounded nothing like a hunter closing in on his prize. It sounded like a man who didn't want to hurt her, but didn't know how to stop himself either. Still, Angel had bolted. Instinct over reason, fear over longing, survival over the truth that twisted inside her like barbed wire. Because if he caught her, it wouldn't be her life she'd lose. It would be her heart. And right now, the world felt far too cruel to trust anyone with. The night settled over the desert like a heavy velvet curtain, the sky deepening into a quiet blue-black that seemed to swallow every secret the land had ever held. And Angel sat on the edge of the dying campfire, her hands trembling despite the heat, her eyes flicking again and again toward the man who had finally caught her but hadn't bound her wrists, hadn't dragged her through the sand, hadn't treated her like the contract that had nearly consumed him. Instead, Jace Carter sat a few feet away, sharpening his knife, with the kind of absent-minded focus only a man wrestling with his own soul possessed. She had expected cruelty, victory, cold satisfaction. What she found instead was silence. A silence thick enough to feel like a hand resting against her ribs, gently pressing as if trying to measure the shape of the truth hidden inside her. She dared to finally speak. "If you're turning me in," she whispered, her voice cracking like thin glass, "why aren't we riding?" Jace didn't look up, didn't break the rhythm of the blade sliding against stone, but his jaw tightened, and the flames caught the conflict burning in his eyes. "Because," he said slowly, "I don't want to be the man who delivers you to people who don't deserve you." The words stunned her. They didn't sound like a hunter. They didn't even sound like a man protecting a payday. They sounded like a confession he had been carrying for miles, buried beneath grit and pride. Angel swallowed hard, her pulse racing in a way that terrified her far more than the posters nailed to saloon doors ever had. "They'll come for us," she whispered. "Other hunters, the marshal's men. You know how this ends." Jace finally stopped sharpening the blade, set the knife aside, and lifted his gaze to hers. It was direct, unguarded, carved from every hard mistake he'd ever made. "Ursa," he murmured, "I know exactly how it ends. I choose you. That's how." And something inside her, something she'd buried for years, something she didn't even realize had roots, broke open. Because for the first time in her life, someone wasn't using her, chasing her, or demanding something from her in exchange for protection. This man, this lone wolf who had lived his whole life without a home, was choosing her in the open desert with enemies closing in. She tried to argue, tried to form a protest, but her breath caught when he stood, walked toward her, and placed a hand on her cheek. His touch was rough, scarred, but heartbreakingly gentle. "I was hired to turn you in," he said in a low voice. "But somewhere along the way, Angel, you stopped being my contract." Her throat tightened as he leaned closer, the fire casting warm shadows across his face, the air humming between them like heat rising from gunmetal. She had spent her whole life running, from danger, from betrayal, from love, and now here she was, realizing that for the first time, she didn't want to run at all. "What if loving me ruins you?" she whispered. Jace gave a small, almost broken smile. "Then let it," he murmured. "I'd rather be ruined with you than whole without you. And before she could breathe. Before she could think of all the reasons this was impossible, he pulled her into his arms, not with the force of a man claiming possession, but with the trembling restraint of someone terrified they might break the only good thing they've ever held. She pressed her forehead to his chest, felt the steady beat beneath his shirt, and for a moment the world felt safe until a distant echo cracked through the night like a warning shot. The heavy thunder of multiple horses approaching fast, kicking up dust, cutting through the quiet with the promise of blood. Angel's eyes flew open and Jace's arms tightened around her. "They found us," she breathed. "Yeah," Jace whispered, reaching for his gun, jaw set, eyes hardening into the storm she knew he'd been born from. "But they're too late. You're mine to protect now." And as the riders broke through the shadows, closing in on the flickering fire, Angel realized something powerful, terrifying, and undeniable. Jace Carter wasn't saving her.